The huge meeting room was full of strange sounds and voices. 12 different alien species sat around a giant floating picture that showed spaceships from all their worlds. Commander Taman from Earth stood quietly near the wall. His old face showed no feelings as the aliens made fun of humans and their new warship. The floating picture showed the human ship called HSF Determination. It looked small and weak next to the huge alien battleships. The ship had smooth lines and seemed almost delicate compared to the massive war machines from other worlds. Ambassador Vextar was a tall creature with green, scaly skin like a lizard. He pointed at the human ship and made ugly faces. His voice was loud and mean when he talked. "Look at this tiny ship the humans brought us. They call this thing a warship. My people use bigger ships just to carry garbage around the galaxy. This human ship looks like a toy that children would play with." All the other aliens started laughing at Vextar's words. Their laughter was strange and scary. Some made clicking sounds with their mouths. Others made deep growling noises. The sound filled the whole meeting room and echoed off the walls. General Korth belonged to a race that looked like giant insects. He had big bug eyes and mouth parts that clicked together when he talked. His species was called the Clicktar, and they were known for being mean fighters. The humans must have made a mistake when they built this ship. Maybe they thought they were making a mining ship to dig rocks from asteroids. This pathetic ship could not even scratch the paint on our war beetles. Our smallest fighters are stronger than this human joke. More alien voices joined in making fun of the human ship. A creature with purple tentacles waved them around as it spoke. Another alien that looked like a walking tree made deep rumbling, sounds that meant it was laughing too. Captain Jiwoo was the young woman chosen to command the Determination. She watched everything from her ship through a special communication screen. Her dark eyes were angry, but she stayed calm as she listened to the aliens insult her ship and her people. Standing next to Captain Jiwoo was Chief Engineer Bo-Ram. She was an old woman who had worked for 30 years to build the ship's most important weapon system. Her wrinkled hands moved over a small computer tablet as she checked numbers and made calculations. She knew secrets about their ship that would shock these laughing aliens. The alien mockery went on for a long time. Each species took turns pointing out why the human ship was weak and useless. They said the ship's armor was too thin to stop. Their weapons. They laughed at the small crew of only 200 people when their own ships carried thousands of warriors. The aliens compared their weapons to the human ship's guns. They had plasma cannons that could melt through mountains. They had quantum torpedoes that could destroy entire moons. They had gravity weapons that could crush planets. What did the humans have? A few simple-looking guns that seemed old and outdated. A fat alien with 4 arms and yellow skin stood up to speak. His name was Commander Blocks, and his people were famous for building the biggest, most powerful warships in the galaxy. I have seen cargo ships with better weapons than this human vessel. My youngest child could design a stronger ship using scrap metal and broken parts. How did the humans even get permission to join our defense fleet with such a weak contribution? The other aliens made more laughing sounds at Commander Blocks's insults. They seemed to enjoy making humans look stupid and weak. Many of these alien species had been fighting wars for thousands of years. They thought humans were just babies who knew nothing about real space combat. What none of these aliens knew was that humans had learned important lessons from studying every major space war in galactic history. While other species focused on building bigger ships with more guns, humans had discovered something much more dangerous. Sometimes the most powerful weapon was not the biggest one, but the smartest one. Human scientists and engineers had spent years working on new ideas. They studied how atoms and molecules worked. They learned about quantum physics and the forces that held matter together. They discovered ways to use the basic laws of the universe as weapons. The aliens kept making jokes about the small human crew. They bragged about their thousands of soldiers and hundreds of fighter pilots. They did not understand that humans had built their ship to be efficient, not just big. Every person on the Determination was highly trained and knew multiple jobs. The alien meeting continued. Captain Jiwoo listened to more insults about her ship and her people. The aliens called humans primitive and backwards. They said Earth was a weak little planet that should stick to farming and leave real warfare to the grown-up species. Chief Engineer Bo-Ram just smiled quietly as she listened to the alien voices. She had dedicated her whole life to proving that Human intelligence was just as valuable as alien strength. The weapon system she had designed would show these arrogant creatures what human science could really do. Lieutenant Haijin was the young communications officer on the bridge with Captain Jiwoo. He was getting angry as he listened to the aliens, making fun of their ship. His hands were clenched into fists and his face was red with frustration. "Captain, should I send them a message telling them to shut up and show some respect? These aliens think they are so much better than us, but they have never seen what our ship can really do." Captain Jiwoo put a gentle hand on the young officer's shoulder to calm him down. Her voice was steady and confident when she answered him. "No, Lieutenant Haijin, we do not need to argue with them using words. Very soon we will show them what human engineering can accomplish. Our actions will be much louder than anything we could say to them." The alien meeting finally ended after 2 hours of constant insults and mockery. The various species representatives filed out of the room still chuckling and making jokes about the pathetic human contribution to their joint defense fleet. They went back to their massive warships feeling superior and confident. None of them suspected that they had just made a terrible mistake. They had underestimated not just the human ship, but human intelligence and determination. Captain Jiwoo turned to her crew with a small smile on her face. "Well, my friends, it looks like we will have a chance to show them what human creativity and science can really accomplish. All crew members prepare for combat trials. Let us give our new alien friends a demonstration they will never forget for the rest of their lives." Admiral Thexmore stood on his command bridge watching the readings with growing confusion. The ancient wreck was showing impossible energy signatures that made no sense according to everything his scientists understood about dead ships. His instruments detected power levels that should not exist in something that had been floating in space for thousands of years. The alien admiral was old and experienced in many battles, but this situation was completely new to him. He had studied the historical records about this derelict, and every report said it was just an empty shell left behind by some extinct civilization. His science officer reported massive power spikes coming from deep inside the vessel, but that should have been impossible. Thexmore ordered his fleet to maintain their current positions, thinking this might be some kind of natural phenomenon, or perhaps a delayed reaction to their presence. He had seen stranger things in his long career, and he was not easily frightened by unusual sensor readings. The important thing was to stay focused on their mission to destroy the human colony. What the admiral did not know was that deep inside the supposedly dead ship, Captain Dongyun was materializing in the command center. The ancient teleportation system had pulled him directly from the Harmony, along with a small team of specialists who knew the old protocols. The ship had been waiting for someone with the right genetic markers and command training to take control. Dongyun was a career military officer who came from a long line of spacers. His family had served on ships like this one, back when humanity was fighting for survival against impossible odds. He had studied the old manuals and knew the basic procedures, but actually standing on the bridge of a legend was overwhelming. The command center was huge and filled with systems he had only read about in history books. Apollo holographic form appeared before the human captain as the artificial intelligence activated its communication protocols. The AI looked almost human, but with a blue glow that showed its artificial nature. It had been alone for 3,000 years, maintaining the ship and watching the galaxy change around it. Now finally it had humans to work with again. "Welcome aboard," Captain Apollo said in a voice that carried the weight of centuries. "I have been monitoring the current tactical situation. We face approximately 400 enemy vessels, including 12 Dreadnought-class warships and 60 heavy cruisers. They are positioning for assault operations against the new Sol colony. Shall I initiate defensive measures?" The AI had been learning and watching while pretending to be dead. It knew everything about the hegemony, fleet, their weapons, their tactics, their weaknesses. It had studied every alien race in the galaxy during its long sleep, and it understood exactly how to fight them. The enemy ships were powerful by current standards, but they were nothing compared to what humanity had built during the old wars. Dongyun felt the deck plates vibrate under his feet as more systems came online throughout the massive vessel. The ship was so large that it took time for all its parts to fully activate. He could feel the power building as fusion reactors that had been cold for millennia began their startup sequences. The energy was incredible beyond anything modern human ships could produce. Engineer Hyansu ran through corridors that were coming alive, with lights and activity. She had been working on modern human ships her whole career, but this vessel was like stepping into a dream. The passages were enormous, built to accommodate thousands of crew members and the equipment they would need for extended operations far from any support base. As she reached the main reactor chamber, Hyansu gasped at the sight before her. The fusion core was awakening with light brighter than a small star. Power flowed through conduits as thick as subway tunnels, feeding energy to weapons and systems that most humans thought were just legends. The engineering was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The reactor room was filled with backup systems and redundant controls that could keep the ship running even if major sections were destroyed. Everything was built to last for centuries and to function in combat conditions that would destroy lesser vessels. The old human engineers had not built this ship to be pretty. They had built it to win wars. Back on the bridge, Dong-Hyun watched as tactical display showed the true scope of the vessel he now commanded. The ship was not just large, it was a mobile city capable of housing entire fleets within its hull. Hangar bays stretched for kilometers, containing thousands of fighters and bombers that were also waking up from their long sleep. Apollo began explaining the ship capabilities to its new captain. The artificial intelligence had maintained everything perfectly during the long wait, keeping systems ready for immediate activation. The ship carried enough firepower to fight entire civilizations and enough supplies to operate independently for decades without resupply. The aliens suddenly detected the electromagnetic pulses that accompanied the ship awakening, but they still did not understand what they were seeing. Their instruments showed energy patterns that made no sense according to their understanding of technology. What looked like simple metal plating on the hull began retracting to reveal weapon ports and launch bays that seemed to go on forever. Commander Vexthal felt his first touch of real fear as he realized the derelict was not dead at all. His tactical officer reported that the energy signatures they were detecting matched those of an active military vessel, but that was impossible. The thing was too big to be a ship and too old to be functional. Yet the evidence was right there on his screens. The alien commander tried to convince himself that this was just some automated defense system left behind by the ancient builders. Perhaps proximity sensors had activated emergency power or something similar. But deep down he was beginning to suspect that his fleet had made a terrible mistake. The humans had seemed too confident, too willing to let the aliens approach their colony without serious resistance. As more of the ship systems came online, the aliens began to see what they were really facing. This was not an archaeological site. It was a warship that had been playing dead for 3,000 years. The hull configuration that had looked random and ancient was actually an incredibly sophisticated design that maximized both offensive and defensive capabilities. Pilot Sun-Woo climbed into his fighter cockpit as hangar bay lights activated around him. The ancient craft was more advanced than anything he had trained on, but the basic controls were still familiar. The ship had been designed by humans for humans, and the interfaces made intuitive sense even after all these centuries. The fighters themselves were works of art, each one carrying more firepower than a modern frigate. They had been built when humanity faced enemies that outnumbered them by vast amounts, and every single ship had to count. The weapon systems used principles that pushed the boundaries of physics, creating destructive potential that seemed almost magical. Throughout the massive vessel, thousands of similar scenes were playing out as ancient systems activated and human crew members took their positions. The ship had been designed to operate with minimal crew, using artificial intelligence and automation to handle most functions, but it still needed human judgment and creativity. For complex decisions, Apollo coordinated everything with the efficiency of a mind that had been planning this moment for millennia. The AI had run simulations of this exact scenario countless times during its long wait. It knew exactly how to deploy every weapon, how to position every ship, and how to coordinate the coming battle for maximum effectiveness. The hegemony fleet found itself in the position of predators who had accidentally cornered something far more dangerous than themselves. They had come expecting to fight a small human colony defended by patrol boats and civilian militia. Instead, they were facing the awakening fury of humanity. Greatest military achievement, a ship that had been built to fight gods and win as the last systems came fully online, the ancient warship completed its transformation from sleeping relic to active predator. The aliens were about to learn why humanity had survived every challenge thrown at them, and why their ancestors had built weapons capable of sleeping for thousands of years before awakening at exactly the right moment. Commander Vexthal screamed orders across his fleet communication channels as the human supercarrier revealed its true nature before his horrified eyes. Armor plating slid away like the petals of some deadly flower, exposing row after row of weapon systems that his tactical computers could not identify. The ship was so enormous that entire sections of it had been hidden behind what looked like random hull damage. The alien commander had fought in dozens of battles and seen every type of warship design in known space, but this thing defied all classification. His instruments detected energy signatures that operated on principles his science teams could not understand. Some of the weapon ports were larger than his entire flagship, and they were all pointing directly at his fleet. The tactical situation had changed from a simple colonial assault to something that might determine the survival of his entire civilization. Vexthal realized with growing horror that the humans had not been caught off guard at all. They had been waiting, and now they were ready to show the galaxy what they were truly capable of when threatened. Deep inside the awakening supercarrier pilot, Sun Wu completed his pre-flight checks as the hangar bay around him filled with activity. The ancient fighter craft was more sophisticated than anything he had ever flown, but the controls responded to his touch like they had been waiting for him specifically. The ship artificial intelligence had been preparing for this moment for 3,000 years. The hangar bays of the supercarrier were vast caverns that could house entire fleets within their depths. As Sun Wu looked around, he could see thousands of other fighters preparing for launch, each one crewed by pilots who had volunteered for this desperate mission. The ancient human engineers had built this ship to carry enough firepower to fight entire civilizations. Single-handed, each fighter was a masterpiece of military engineering carrying weapons that made modern human ships look like toys. They had been designed during humanity's darkest hour, when survival required pushing the boundaries of physics beyond safe limits. The technology was so advanced that even modern humans had trouble understanding how it all worked. Apollo coordinated the launch sequences with mechanical precision that came from centuries of preparation. The artificial intelligence had run simulations of this battle scenario countless times during its long sleep. It knew exactly how to deploy each fighter for maximum effectiveness against the specific alien fleet configurations it was facing. The first wave of human fighters exploded from the supercarrier launch bays, like a swarm of deadly insects released from their nest. Each small craft carried enough firepower to destroy an alien frigate, and they moved with impossible grace and speed. The hegemony pilots had never faced opponents like these, and their traditional tactics were useless. Sun Wu felt the incredible acceleration as his fighter launched into open space. The ancient propulsion systems pushed his craft to speeds that should have been impossible for something so small. Behind him, thousands of his fellow pilots followed in perfect formation, guided by artificial intelligence systems that could predict enemy movements before they happened. The alien fighter squadrons tried to intercept the human attack craft, but they might as well have been trying to catch lightning with their bare hands. Human fighters moved in three-dimensional patterns that seemed to defy physics, dancing between enemy weapons' fire, with movements too fast and precise for biological reflexes alone. On the bridge of his dreadnought, Admiral Thexmore watched his fighter squadrons being systematically destroyed by opponents they could not even target effectively. The human craft used some kind of advanced stealth technology that made them nearly invisible to his sensors until they were already firing their weapons. Human fighters attacked in coordinated groups that struck at the most vulnerable points of alien ships with surgical precision. They targeted shield generators, weapon systems, and command centers with weapons that cut through advanced armor like it was made of paper. The aliens had never seen technology like this, and they had no defense against it. Marine Colonel Young-ho materialized aboard an alien command ship as the supercarrier teleportation systems delivered his boarding parties directly past enemy shields and armor. The ancient human technology could move people through space, instantly bypassing all the defensive measures that normally protected warships from assault. The alien crew members stared in shock as armed humans appeared in the heart of their vessel like ghosts materializing from thin air. Young-Ho and his Marines carried weapons that the aliens had never seen, energy rifles that could punch through their battle armor, as if it offered no protection at all. The boarding. Actions were swift and efficient. The human Marines had been trained to fight in the cramped conditions inside alien ships, and they moved through enemy vessels like a deadly plague. Each team knew exactly where to strike to disable their targets. Most effectively, the aliens found themselves outgunned and outmaneuvered in their own ships. Back in space, the Supercarrier continued disgorging attack craft from its massive hangar bays. But these were not just fighters. Full-sized frigates and destroyers emerged from the depths of the ancient vessel, each one carrying weapons technology that made them superior to the alien dreadnoughts. The hegemony fleet, which had seemed overwhelming just minutes before, now found itself facing opponents that outnumbered them and carried superior technology. The tactical situation had reversed completely. The aliens were no longer predators, hunting helpless prey. They had become the hunted commander. Vexthal tried desperately to reorganize his forces, but every order he gave seemed to make the situation worse. The human attack craft moved too fast and struck too precisely for traditional fleet tactics to be effective. His ships were being picked apart by opponents they could barely see much less target. The ancient human supercarrier had not even begun to use its main weapons yet. The massive energy cannons that lined its hull remained silent, while the smaller attack craft dealt with the immediate threat Apollo was methodically dismantling. The alien fleet using only a fraction of the ship's true capabilities. As more alien vessels fell to the human assault, the survivors began to realize the true scope of their mistake. They had not encountered a sleeping archaeological site, they had awakened humanity's ultimate weapon, a ship that had been designed to fight impossible odds and emerge victorious. The aliens had believed they were facing primitive humans who could be easily conquered. What they had actually found was a trap that had been waiting for 3,000 years for someone foolish enough to spring it. The sleeping giant was fully awake now, and it was showing the galaxy why humanity had survived every challenge. On the human colony of New Sol, the defenders watched in amazement as their sensors showed the alien invasion fleet being systematically destroyed by forces they had not even known existed. The ancient legends spoke of ships like this, but most people had thought they were just stories told to children. The Supercarrier had revealed only a small portion of its true power, but that had been enough to turn the tide of battle completely. The aliens were learning that humanity's greatest strength had never been in their numbers or their obvious military might. It was in their ability to plan ahead and prepare for threats that had not even emerged yet. The first engagement was ending, but everyone involved knew this was just the beginning. The ancient ship had awakened, and it carried secrets that would change the balance of power throughout the galaxy. The aliens had made the fatal mistake of underestimating humanity, and now they would pay the price for their arrogance. Admiral Thexmore felt his proud fleet crumbling around him as more human vessels continued emerging from the Supercarrier massive hangar bays. These were not just small attack craft anymore, but full-sized warships that had been stored within the ancient vessel like deadly surprises waiting to be unwrapped. Each ship that launched made the tactical situation worse for his forces. The alien admiral had commanded fleets for over 30 years and fought against every major military power in the galaxy, but he had never seen anything like this. The human ships moved with coordinated precision that suggested a single controlling intelligence guiding their every action. They struck at weak points with surgical accuracy and seemed to know his battle plans before he could implement them. His tactical computers could not even properly classify the human vessels. The energy signatures they detected defied known physics, and the weapon systems operated on principles that alien science could not explain. Some of the smaller human ships carried more firepower than his largest dreadnoughts, and they moved with speed that should have been impossible for their size. Dr. Sungmin worked frantically in the Supercarrier medical bay, as wounded human personnel were teleported aboard from the colonial defense stations. The ship automated medical systems were already producing healing devices and medicines that could repair terrible injuries in minutes, rather than hours or days. The medical technology was as advanced as everything else aboard the ancient vessel. Nanobots flowed through injured bodies, repairing damage at the cellular level, while scanners diagnosed problems faster than any living doctor could think. The ship had been designed to support massive military operations far from any support base. Seungmin watched in amazement as soldiers who should have been dying were restored to perfect health within minutes. The ancient human engineers had understood that keeping people alive and healthy was just as important as building powerful weapons. The Supercarrier was not just an instrument of war, it was a mobile civilization. Throughout the ship, similar scenes were playing out as systems that had been dormant for millennia demonstrated capabilities that seemed almost magical. The artificial gravity worked perfectly, the life support systems maintained ideal conditions, and the food production facilities began creating meals from basic elements. Apollo brought the carrier main weapon systems online, and space itself seemed to bend around the massive ship. The primary energy cannons drew power directly from quantum fluctuations in the fabric of reality, creating destructive forces that could reshape
matter at the atomic level. When these weapons fired, they did not just destroy targets, they erased them from existence. The first salvo from the Supercarrier main guns vaporized an entire squadron of alien heavy cruisers, leaving nothing behind but
expanding clouds of superheated plasma. The weapons were so powerful that they created temporary distortions in space-time that affected nearby ships, even if they were not directly hit. Communications Officer Dae-hyun monitored alien transmissions as panic spread through their ranks like wildfire. The hegemony commanders were sending desperate messages to their home worlds, warning of human capabilities that defied all previous intelligence reports. Their voices carried terror as they described weapons that violated the fundamental laws of physics. The alien communications revealed just how completely the situation had changed. The hegemony had encountered human forces before, and always found them manageable opponents with predictable technology and tactics. But this ancient ship represented something beyond their comprehension, a reminder that humanity had once built weapons capable of challenging the gods themselves. The human supercarrier escort fleet took formation around their ancient flagship as vessels that had been sleeping for 3,000 years flew in perfect coordination. Some of these ships carried crews of human volunteers, but others were operated entirely by artificial intelligence constructs that had been waiting patiently for this moment. The escort vessels were themselves more powerful than anything currently flying in human space. They had been built during the early expansion wars when humanity faced extinction from multiple alien threats. Each ship carried technology that pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible, even by the standards of their own time. As the human fleet moved into full combat formation, the remaining alien forces found themselves completely outclassed. The hegemony ships had seemed incredibly powerful when they arrived, but now they looked like primitive toys compared to the ancient human war machines. The technological gap was so vast that resistance seemed almost pointless. Captain Dong-hyun stood on the Supercarrier observation deck watching the battle unfold with mixed emotions. The power at his command was incredible beyond imagination, but it came with the terrible knowledge of what humanity had once faced. The ship had been built during desperate times when survival required weapons that no sane civilization would normally create. The view from the observation deck showed the full scope of the engagement. Alien ships burned in the darkness while human vessels moved between them, like predators among sheep. The ancient fleet had awakened hungry for battle after 3,000 years of enforced sleep, and they were making up for lost time. Apollo reported tactical updates with mechanical precision that concealed vast intelligence and experience. The artificial intelligence had been studying military strategy and tactics for millennia, analyzing every battle fought in known space. It understood warfare at a level that few biological minds could comprehend. The alien fleet attempted several desperate counterattacks, but each one was anticipated and countered before it could develop into a serious threat. The human ships seemed to know what their enemies would do before the aliens themselves had decided their movements were coordinated with inhuman precision. Engineer Hyun-soo monitored power distribution throughout the massive vessel, as weapon systems drew enormous amounts of energy. The ancient fusion reactors provided power on a scale that dwarfed anything in modern, human space. Each reactor could have powered an entire city, but the Supercarrier needed dozens of them to operate at full capacity. The ship was revealing capabilities that exceeded even the most optimistic projections from historical records. Weapons that had been theoretical concepts during its construction were now demonstrating their terrible effectiveness against real targets. The ancient human engineers had built something that transcended the normal boundaries of military technologies. The tide of battle turned completely in favor of the humans. The surviving alien commanders began to understand the true scope of their mistake. They had not just encountered a superior enemy, they had awakened something that had been deliberately hidden away because it was too dangerous to use under normal circumstances. The hegemony invasion fleet, which had arrived with such confidence, was now in full retreat. Those alien ships that could still move were fleeing as fast as their engines could carry them. The survivors would carry word of this encounter back to their homeworlds, and the news would change everything. The human supercarrier and its escort fleet had demonstrated capabilities that would reshape the balance of power. Throughout the galaxy, every alien civilization would now have to reconsider their position regarding humanity. The species they had dismissed as primitive and weak had revealed technology that made their best weapons look like stone axes. The battle was ending, but everyone involved knew this was just the beginning. The ancient ship had awakened from its long sleep, and it carried secrets that would change the course of galactic history. The aliens had learned too late that humanity's greatest weapon was not their obvious military might, but their ability to plan and prepare across centuries. As the last alien ships fled into the darkness, leaving behind only wreckage and empty space, Captain Dongyun stood on the supercarrier observation deck watching the stars wheel past. The massive vessel had begun its journey toward New Sol Colony, where human defenders were already being reinforced by ships from the ancient fleet. The colonial defense forces had been expecting certain death when the alien invasion fleet arrived. Instead, they found themselves protected by guardians they had not even known existed. The supercarrier had turned what should have been a massacre into a complete victory for humanity. But everyone involved knew this battle was just the beginning of something much larger. Historian Ji-young accessed the ship, vast archives discovering records of humanity's first expansion into the galaxy thousands of years ago. The files revealed a time when humans faced extinction from multiple alien threats, when survival required building weapons that pushed technology beyond any safe limits. The supercarrier represented humanity's determination to never again be caught defenseless. The historical records painted a picture of desperate times when human worlds were being destroyed faster than they could be defended. The old government had made a terrible decision to build ships so powerful that they could threaten entire civilizations. These vessels were hidden away after the crisis passed because they were too dangerous to use under normal circumstances. Apollo revealed to the human crew that dozens of similar ships had been placed throughout human space during that ancient time. Each supercarrier contained not just weapons, but the genetic templates and cultural archives needed to rebuild human civilization from scratch if necessary. They were Orcs as much as warships carrying humanity, future within their armored hulls. The artificial intelligence explained that the ships had been programmed to activate only when human survival was truly threatened. They had specific instructions to remain hidden until the right conditions were met. The alien invasion of New Sol had triggered those conditions for the first time in 3,000 years. Each sleeping supercarrier was positioned to protect a different sector of human space, and they were all connected through quantum communication networks that operated faster than light. The awakening of one ship sent signals to all the others, preparing them for possible activation if the threat proved too large for a single vessel to handle. The crew learned that their ship was designated as Guardian 7, and that 6 other identical vessels were already beginning their startup sequences in distant parts of human space. The ancient planners had understood that any threat capable of awakening the Guardians would likely be too large for one ship to handle. Alone, Dr. Shungman treated the alien prisoners who had been captured during the battle, and was amazed by their reactions. The captured enemies had expected execution or torture, but instead found themselves receiving excellent medical care and comfortable quarters. This compassion puzzled them because they had been taught that humans were cruel and savage. The aliens could not understand why their captors showed mercy instead of revenge. They had come to destroy human worlds and kill everyone living there, but now they were being treated with respect and dignity. This behavior did not match anything in their intelligence. Reports about human nature and psychology Some of the prisoners began asking questions about human culture and philosophy, wanting to understand how a species capable of building such terrible weapons could also show such kindness. The contradiction challenged everything they had been taught about their enemies and forced them to reconsider their basic assumptions. News of the Supercarrier awakening spread across human space through official military channels and civilian communication networks. The story seemed impossible at first, but confirmation came from multiple sources, including video recordings of the battle that showed the ancient ship in action. Human colonies that had been living in fear of alien attack suddenly felt safer knowing that Guardian ships were watching over them. The psychological impact was enormous as people realized their ancestors had planned for this day across thousands of years. The sleeping giants were awakening to protect their descendants. The story also reached alien civilizations through their own intelligence networks and fleeing survivors from the hegemony fleet. The news created panic in some species and curiosity in others. Everyone wanted to know what other surprises humanity might have. Hidden throughout the galaxy, diplomatic channels that had been quiet for years suddenly became active as alien governments tried to assess the new situation. Some species that had been considering aggression against human worlds quickly changed their plans. Others that had been neutral began reaching out to establish better relationships with humanity. The galactic balance of power had shifted in a single day, and every civilization was scrambling to understand what it meant for their own security and future plans. The humans had revealed that they possessed technology and capabilities that no one had suspected existed. Captain Dong Hyun received reports from Apollo about other Guardian ships coming online throughout human space. Guardian 2 had awakened near the industrial worlds of the Centauri cluster. Guardian 5 was powering up in the Outer Rim territories. Each ship was assessing local threats and preparing to act if necessary. The artificial intelligence networks of all 7 ships were sharing information and coordinating their responses to ensure maximum effectiveness. The ancient planners had created a system that could respond to threats on any scale from single raiders to full galactic invasions. Engineer Hyun-soo studied the ship advanced technology, hoping to understand systems that modern humanity had lost over the centuries. The knowledge contained within the vessel databases could revolutionize human civilization, providing tools needed to explore new frontiers and defend existing territory more effectively. The Supercarrier carried manufacturing systems that could build almost anything given the right raw materials. Its automated factories could produce weapons, starships, medical equipment, or civilian goods with equal facility. The ship was designed to be completely self-sufficient for decades of independent operation. As the ancient vessel approached New Sol Colony, the people living there gathered to watch their protector arrive. The sight of the massive ship was both inspiring and terrifying, a reminder of what their ancestors had been capable of when necessity demanded impossible solutions. The Supercarrier took up position as permanent guardian of the system. Its presence, transforming the entire sector overnight. Trade routes that had been dangerous became safe as pirates and raiders found other hunting grounds, rather than risk encountering the human battle fortress. Local alien governments that had been considering expansion into human territory quickly abandoned those plans when they learned about the Guardian ships. The cost of any aggressive action had suddenly become far too high to contemplate. The sleeping giants were awake and watching. The story of Guardian 7 spread throughout human space, becoming a source of pride and wonder for people who had thought they knew their own history. The ship represented not just military power, but the foresight and determination of ancestors who had planned across millennia to protect future generations. Apollo revealed that the ship mission was far from over. The artificial intelligence had detected signals from potential threats in distant parts of the galaxy, and it was preparing to coordinate with the other Guardian vessels to address those challenges. The ancient protectors had awakened, and they would not sleep again until humanity was truly safe. Admiral Thexmore knelt among the wreckage of his flagship bridge, surrounded by broken equipment and the bodies of his crew members. The encounter with the human supercarrier had destroyed not just his fleet, but his entire understanding of galactic politics and military power. The aliens had thought they knew what humanity was capable of, but they had been terribly wrong. The Hegemony High Command relieved Thexmore of duty, But they also listened very carefully to his detailed reports about human capabilities. The Admiral described weapons that violated known physics ships that moved like living creatures and artificial intelligence systems that seemed to think faster than any biological mind could process information. His testimony forced the alien leadership to completely reconsider their strategic assessments of human space. They had been planning expansion campaigns based on the assumption that humans were a weak species with limited military technology. Now they realized they had been dealing with only a tiny fraction of human strength, and that knowledge terrified them. The surviving alien commanders who had witnessed the battle carried similar stories back to their homeworlds. Each account described the same impossible scene of ancient human ships awakening from millennial sleep to defend their creator's descendants. The stories spread through alien society like wildfire, creating fear and wonder. In equal measure, Captain Dong-Hyun accepted permanent command of Guardian 7 as more human volunteers arrived to join the crew. The ancient ship needed people who could understand its advanced systems, but it also required individuals who could help guide humanity's future in a galaxy that was rapidly changing. The Supercarrier was more than just a weapon, it was a symbol of human determination and foresight. The